We continue to follow that breaking news out of Washington. The Trump administration is rescinding its memo to freeze federal aid.
This comes less than 24 hours after the order went into effect. Joining us now to discuss this change is Oakland University professor of political science, Nicole Mathew. Thanks so much for being here, Nicole.
You're welcome.
So it did cause some confusion, the rescinding of this memo today. The Trump administration has said this is still in full force and effect. So what can we glean from all of this?
Yeah, there's still a lot of confusion there because he issued a bunch of executive orders in his first week to instruct executive agencies not to use DEI programs, to promote electric vehicles ahead of internal combustion vehicles. And so those orders are still in effect. Now, the funding freeze basically said, no one can get any of this money until you show that you aren't using money to promote things that are anti the agenda of the president. Now that they've rescinded that, it looks like that freeze won't take immediate effect, but if they find programs that are against the president's priorities, they could still freeze the funding for those programs.
So in the future, if this were to move forward, what does that mean for those programs? Because when news of this spread, a lot of them were very anxious and concerned.
Well, it's just absolute chaos for any agency or nonprofit or even state and local governments that rely on money from the federal government. And that's where a lot of the federal policy goes through. Is it's not administered directly by federal bureaucrats, but the money goes through nonprofit agencies, universities, local governments. They rely on these grants to do certain programs, and they're kind of thrown into a state of confusion. Should I keep funding this program? Is somebody later going to tell me that it's against the president's priorities and therefore illegal to fund it? So they're still in a kind of state of they don't know what to do.
And Attorney General Dana Nessel here in Michigan threatened litigation in response to yesterday's announcement. This was obviously before the memo was rescinded. But what does that mean? Can you legally challenge this? Can this be stopped state by state?
Well, what was being challenged, was supposed to be in court next Monday, was whether this pause is legal or not. Now that that's been rescinded, most likely will be considered moot by the courts and they won't hear it.
And we know that there was a federal judge who moved to block it because they wanted to challenge the legality of it. Any thoughts there, and the fact that, again, the White House is still saying that they're going to move forward?
Yeah, well, a lot of it depended on the interpretation of whether it was a temporary pause or whether it's removing funding for something that Congress had appropriated. So back in the 1970s, Congress got in a lot of fights with the Nixon administration because they kind of refused to pay out money to programs that Congress had said and passed laws that we're going to fund these programs. And so Congress fought back by passing an Impoundment Control Act that said, basically presidents can't do that, got upheld by the courts later. So it's a little tricky. Presidents could pause funding, but they can't permanently not spend money that Congress has said they need to spend.
And you referenced some history there, the Nixon administration. You're a political science professor. Do you remember a period in time when an administration came in the first couple weeks has done so much? It's been so, every single day it feels like headlines are being generated about just everything that's happening.
I mean, I wasn't alive then, but probably the FDR presidency coming in first 100 days, passing a lot of new programs. This is kind of the reverse of that. We're pausing programs. We're taking away foreign aid. We're, kind of shutting down parts of the federal government. So it's kind of like FDR in reverse.
Yeah, and speaking of those shutdowns, something else that had come out of this week, the president offering buyouts to federal employees, and the money that they would get would be taxed. So they're either getting those buyouts or just being told to quit. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, this is pretty unusual. Obviously, we see that in the private sector a lot. We don't often see that in the public sector, and we've never had, I think this is the first time they've ever emailed every federal employee all at the same time. And so we'll see. There's some questions to legality there. Does the president really have authority to offer buyouts to federal employees? We'll see what happens there.
All right. Well, Nicole Mathew is professor of political science at Oakland University. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.